Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, the place where the business of keeping our government running happens every day. But that's not the only business in town. Over 16.5 million people visited Washington, D.C. in 2008, which means that tourism is also big business. Visitors flock to see inspiring symbols of our government, like the White House, patriotic memorials like the Washington Monument, and stimulating museums. When enjoying these exciting public places and activities, people let their guard down. Nobody would expect a madman to attack a museum, which is why everyone was surprised by the events of June 10, 2009 at the Washington, D.C. Holocaust Museum. Especially the two highly trained security guards on duty that day.
June 10th, 2009 started out as an ordinary day. It will be a day that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
For the two newly hired security guards, this very memorable day started rather unremarkably.
On June the 10th, neither Jason or I were supposed to work that day. Jason volunteered me to work with him, to work overtime.
We never work overtime. Never. We don't volunteer for nothing. My grandfather taught me that in the Marine Corps. Do not be the one that volunteers. It will be bad. So I learned.
Jason picked me up that morning. We went to work. I was working the 14th Street entrance. I was the point man.
The point man works outside in the middle section between the two doors for high-scan metal detectors. Jason was working the position known as Romeo 1.
Romeo 1 is a relief person. I come up, you need a break, and I stand your post until you come back.
Eventually, Harry's position on point was relieved by Officer Stephen Johns.
I was on the high scan. I was checking baggages that were coming into the building.
As Harry checks packages, the man next to him, Officer Holt, is about to go to lunch.
Got up there, I guess about 12:30. Wasn't up there maybe 10 minutes, relieved Officer Holt.
As Jason joins his friend Harry checking packages, outside in the street, racist madman James von Brunn is about to launch his brutal attack.
He double parked right in the middle of 14th Street. Nobody's ever done that. Nobody noticed that.
Von Brunn exited his vehicle with an ancient .22 caliber rifle hidden by his side. Working point in front of the museum was Officer Stephen Johns.
Officer John, about 6'6", about 280, just a big, gentle giant, just an awesome person. You come in, he was one of the first people that would speak to you, or just a big teddy bear.
Unfortunately for Officer Johns, no one could have expected what happened next.
Von Brunn walked up to the door. Officer Johns opened the door for the elderly gentleman, doing a kind act. Von Brunn flipped it up from underneath of his shoulder.
And I heard what I thought was a balloon popping. I heard a pop. I look over to my right, and I see a barrel rifle. It fires 2 shots. I realized then that somebody had a gun and they were shooting in the building. I jumped down for cover.
He dropped to a knee. I came right over top of him. We sent rounds down range. We did what we were trained to do.
I could see him on the other side of the window. I saw that he was hit and he went to the ground. I got up, went to the door, and I saw that he was still alive. He was on the ground. I could see blood, and I saw the rifle on his stomach.
Dealing with an active shooter situation is an experience that not many people have had.
You kind of go into like a tunnel vision. There's nothing else around you. It's almost like you lost your hearing, you've lost everything but your survival skills, what makes you react and not react, and something else takes over. It's all your training, it's all your muscle memory, things of that nature that you've been taught, if you've been taught. Things like that take over. Your adrenaline's going. Like I said, tunnel vision. All you see is you, whatever's in front of you, but you don't see anything to your right, you don't see anything to your left. So that's where they teach you different things like, scan your perimeters and look left, look right, come back to what your target is or your suspect, so forth. It's very surreal that day. It was just something very You know, it was out of the ordinary. It was different. It wasn't anything that, you know, anybody would expect.
With the bad guy on the ground outside the museum, Harry and Jason continued to deal with the situation by the book.
Once I was reloaded, I went outside.
We proceeded to the doorway. I covered him, opened the door to retrieve the weapon and get it away from the suspect so nothing else would occur.
He was laying on the ground. I grabbed the rifle from his stomach area, and he had these real bright blue eyes, and it seemed like he wanted to explain to me. Then all of a sudden I just started saying, well, why? Are you a terrorist? And he kept saying to me, Brooklyn Bridge. By that time, other officers came out. I still had the rifle, and I returned inside the building.
At first, everything seemed to be okay. They had overcome the bad guy, and Officer Johns seemed to be stable.
They said the round went into his shoulder. When we saw him later, right after the shooting, we found him. He was sitting there, he was breathing, he was coherent. He had just a little spot of blood right here on the shoulder, so we knew he'd been hit in the shoulder. Once we found out what caliber it was, that's when it got scary, because if anybody knows a .22 caliber round, and if it hits a bone, it just ricochets. It hit the collarbone, ricocheted, and came down through his heart.
Officer Stephen Johns was lost. At the D.C. Holocaust Museum, security officers Harry Weeks and Jason McHuston have neutralized the man who tried to shoot his way into the building. Their success they attribute to one thing.
We always want to be vigilant. Stay on your toes, even though it is boring and you're dealing with so many people and you're trying to look around, you're trying to talk with your buddies and just make the day go by. But at the same time, you have to be on your P's and Q's. If you're complacent, that's the day. The wrong thing will happen to you.
One thing the department did stress, training. We'd shoot twice a year. We'd go back to the academy for experienced officer school. We'd have a test every year when I was in forensic science division. And in the end, there's never enough training. And that was the best thing that I got from the police department.
And being vigilant is as important for civilians as it is for law enforcement.
For a citizen, you always got to be aware where you are. Know your place. Know where your exits are. Never go with someone. Somebody grabs you, always try to fight them. With your children, never have clothing with their names on it. Don't have the names out front on your lamppost. Never go into dark places. Stay where it's well lit. If it's 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning, you live in the city, take a cab.
While many of the 2,000 people at the museum that day owe their lives to officers Weeks and McHuston, what if the officers hadn't been there to stop the madman?
What if he could have done more damage, more lives, could have been lost that day. Unfortunately, we lost an officer, but he didn't succeed. We didn't even allow him to get through the door.
Thanks to their extensive training, Houston and Weeks were able to stop the threat.
The average person would not react. Some people freeze, some people run. Like I said, surreal. They don't know what to do or how to handle such an event like that. Harry knew how he would have, because he had been through an event. I didn't. What if this happens? Will I do what I'm supposed to? Will I do what I'm trained? Will I do what I was taught? Now I know the answer to the what if. Yes, I will.
And what if you find yourself in a situation like a shooting in a public place?
The number one thing is to find out, how am I going to get out of this place? I come into every building I go into and I notice the exits.
If you're in a public place, one thing I always like to do is just get a grasp when you first walk in. Is there any threats in there? Kind of scan the area. Is there anyone that looks suspicious? Is there anyone that's causing a problem?
And if you happen to be a concealed weapons permit holder and find yourself involved in an active shooter situation,
You feel that that threat is there, that someone's going to die if you absolutely don't do something, then you probably need to do something. If you can stop that situation yourself, you're prepared, you're trained, and there's a threat that's going to be an imminent threat to someone's life, then you're in a position to take some action.
And on that terrible day, Officer Stephen Johns was lost. But what if he had been wearing a bulletproof vest?
Had that security guard had a vest on, it most likely would have captured that round and very effectively would have stopped that round. And then he himself could have probably exchanged gunfire and stopped the threat of that person coming in.
and the loss was felt by every person touched by Officer Johns.
Wife lost a husband and the son lost a father. That's sad.
It was a sad day to see somebody like that who just was so kind.
People call me a hero. You're a hero. But people tell me that all the time. But I did what I was trained to do that day with the help of Officer Johns. When he took that bullet, gave us the time to remove our service weapons and fire back. He sacrificed his life. I think he's the true hero in all this. He's the one that should be remembered from this.
The events at the D.C. Holocaust Museum made everyone involved take stock of their lives and the paths they were leading.
I want more from life. I want the best things in life. I want the best things for my children.
Chip on your shoulder, you were fed with a golden spoon. You just thank God you're here, and you just take every day not for granted anymore. So it makes you look at life different.
I can't change the whole world, but we have to be cautious. There's more von Brauns out there, and that's pretty scary.